Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to Peter and Jen and Lisa and Lindsay for inviting me here. Had a great time talking with them and with Chris about AI last night, and I enjoyed meeting so many of you here yesterday for the Teaching and Learning Institute. So it's really, truly, it's an honor for me to be here to be able to address you today for your keynote. So thank you so much. I come from Menlo School in Atherton, California. It's in the heart of Silicon Valley, which is where so much of the AI revolution is happening. So Meta, Google, Apple, OpenAI, Anthropic, all of those companies, the CEOs, they all live within probably a 50-mile radius, and they eat in the same cafes, they sit in the same traffic jams, and many of them send their kids to Menlo School and other schools in the area, where the kids are as clueless about what their parents do as I was. When I was a kid. My dad was a chief lawyer at Digital Equipment Corporation, but I always thought he was just the guy that fixed broken calculators and stuff like that. So I never really appreciated what he did. So we're trying to teach them about AI as well. But we got to learn about it ourselves. So in fact, at the beginning of the summer, our principal told all the faculty, you need to spend 10 hours using AI, whatever that means. And that was kind of a shock to most of us because it's like, it's like we're in the off season, and unlike athletes during the off season, they're working. But for us teachers, the off season, that's when we're actively trying to forget that we're teachers at all, right? Like by July, I can't even remember my Google password or any of my kids. And the only kid that I remember is the one that hands me my Frappuccino at the Starbucks drive-thru. He's like my favorite student now. And 10 hours, it's just kind of a weird number, right? It's oddly specific. It's too long to just blow it off. And it's too short to really learn anything really complex. It's like if someone said, you can't learn French, but you can watch Emily in Paris. Twice. So, I don't know what to do with that. So, I decided, okay, fine. I got to spend 10 hours doing this. I'm going to spend 10 hours doing something really useful. I'm going to spend it planning for my retirement. And so I pulled together all my financial data, and I put it in, and I typed in, when's the earliest that I can retire with my dignity intact? And the browser crashed. It was just out. And then when it rebooted, it said, have you considered faking your own death? And I was like, I can't do that again. That's like every department meeting last year. And I'm the department chair. One of these days, somebody's going to notice. So, I don't know. I didn't really know what to do with that. So, I asked ChatGPT, when do you think this can happen? And finally, I kind of got this answer. And it said, you and your wife can both comfortably retire in 2027 and ride off into the sunset together. But I know it's important to get a second opinion. So I asked some additional chat engines. There's a lot of different models out there. It pays to sort of compare results, and I got different results. What's the deal here? One says 2027, one says 2029, one says never. So I pushed back, and I said, because you can do this. You can say, well, ChatGPT said 2027. What's with the discrepancy? And Claude thought about it for a while, and then it said basically this. Well, Medicare doesn't kick in until 65. You're going to have a number of years where you have to carry your own private health insurance. That's expensive, so that, that's going to add to it. So I went back to ChatGPT, and this is really what I said. I said, what's going on here? And ChatGPT said, good catch, Douglas. You're absolutely right. I mean, ChatGPT, you're supposed to be saving me from myself. I had no idea about this whole Medicare thing. When the expert is congratulating the newbie on their knowledge, we're kind of officially in the pilot asking the passengers how to land the plane zone. That should not happen. But, we finally ended up with a plausible retirement scenario, 2029. We can retire with, some of our dignity still intact. And, the catch is I'm going to have a part-time job, so I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to use AI to write trashy romance novels, because I think there's a need for that. It's the #1 literary genre, and nobody really expects a lot of quality. Josie didn't know what to expect when Rick burst into her third grade classroom, shirtless, carrying a damp kitten like it was the last hope for humanity. Like, actually, I wrote that. It wasn't even AI. So they're like, I can do this. And then the other catch is I got to live in a Costco. But, there's benefits to that too, right? There's free samples, and I can stay in shape because I can walk all the way to the other end of the Costco to buy something and then forget what I was going there to get. So I think it's all good. But, the thing is, AI is really a great tool, but what we really need are human insight and multiple perspectives in order to use it effectively. And that's kind of a lot of what I want to talk about is how do we use technology? How is AI changing the way we use technology? And what is it that we as teachers uniquely bring to society's ability to deal with this technology? Here's one thing that I keep in mind all the time. This is sort of ABC. Accuracy breeds complacency. You see, the danger is not that AI is sometimes wrong. The danger is that it's right so much of the time. Accuracy breeds complacency. I actually went to ChatGPT and I said, tell me about university school. And this is what it came up with just the other night. And I've only spent a couple days here. I'm still blown away by everything that's going on here. I can't really judge whether this is accurate or not. But my guess is that it's probably mostly accurate. And where it's pulling its sources from, now ChatGPT will embed little links that will tell you where it's coming from. So this is really coming from Wikipedia. And the Wikipedia page, if that's accurate, then the ChatGPT results are going to be largely accurate. And Gemini and other search engines. But do you remember when Wikipedia first came out and everybody was saying, well, we got to be careful. Don't necessarily trust Wikipedia. Stuff could be wrong. But accuracy breeds complacency. Like, we don't really question Wikipedia so much anymore because so much of it now happens to be correct. And the same thing happened with Google. You remember when Google came out, we were saying, well, don't just Google stuff. Be wary of what you can pull up on Google. And now, more and more, we're accepting of Google as sources. How many people, if you look at, and you do the check when you go to a restaurant, now they start to put like the calculation of the check on the bill, and they've done that so much, like we don't really ever question whether that really is 20%. Like a restaurant could up that, right, if they wanted to. They could change the algorithm, but we tend to just trust it. I still do it the longhand addition way. I don't know how many people still know how to do that, or whether our kids are going to be doing that, or whether they're just going to trust what shows up in the bill and tip based on that. So it's important, I think, to check multiple sources. Don't just trust it blindly. You're reading this great book, Learning with AI, wonderful book. And there are many, many suggestions and strategies and tips there about how to work with AI, how to verify things, make sure that they're correct. But sometimes it's also good to check our thinking by using AI. So I was walking around on my tour yesterday, and I saw this wonderful fish tank that you had in the lobby, and I took some pictures of it. And I was just curious, well, how many gallons are in that fish tank? I used to teach third grade. When I was teaching third grade, that's when Google first came out. And I never had the kids using Google, but I used Google a lot to kind of help me plan lessons. And sometimes if kids had some random questions, sometimes I'd say, well, that's a really good question. Let's see what Google says. And this is what it came up with. Now, I don't know if anyone here knows how many actual gallons are in the aquarium, but this is what it kind of came up with. And it shows its thinking. It shows how it came up with that. So I think it would be interesting to see, well, is this correct? And is its methodology correct? I think in the middle school you could talk with them about, well, what are the steps that you would take to calculate this? And then compare that with what ChatGPT is doing. Because in this case, it's the process that's more important than the product. It's not actually that important whether it's 2,000 gallons or 1,800 gallons. Unless you're the person taking care of the tank. I guess then it's pretty important. But otherwise, the thinking process is important. And as teachers, that's what we're attuned to. What's the value of the process versus the product? But to me, I just think it's pretty amazing that you can take a photo and it estimates the height of the person from the photo, compares it against the rungs on the ladder, which it knows are a standard height, and comes up with this detail. So it's very interesting, very powerful. This is what's called a reasoning model. But here's the thing. AI is getting exponentially better. Today, AI is the worst AI that you will ever use. It is only getting better. And if you've used AI for any length of time, if you think about how good it's gotten in the last 6 months, you're going to see it get that much better in the next 3 months or 2 months from now, and then even more. It is getting exponentially better. And second semester AI use will be different from first semester AI use. So if you happen to teach the same course, first semester, second semester, it may change enough that you might have to change some things even if you're teaching the same course. That's how quickly it's changing. Let's be clear. We didn't ask for this. Right? This was not a carefully rolled out plan. This kind of makes the gold rush look like a piñata grab. We didn't ask for this. But here we are. What do we do about it? That's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. I want to start, in 3 parts. I want to talk about AI now. I want to talk about how AI works. And I want to tell you why teachers are actually the best people in the world to work with AI. We're going to talk about human insight, how we can live with and use AI. I'm going to talk to you about how I discuss AI with my kids in my classroom. And I'm going to define 3 essential skills for the AI age. And then we're going to talk about process and product and creativity in the 3rd piece. Let's talk about AI now. So kids are using AI. We know this. Some figures estimate upwards of 85% of the kids are using AI for homework or for schoolwork. So, the horse is kind of out of the barn at this point. Most of the kids are using it. Many of them have been using it all summer and up-leveling their skills. So they're going to come in already primed to use AI as a tool. Some kids are using AI without even realizing they're using AI. So for example, Google, if I put in a Google search, you'll notice that it'll pop this AI overview up. That's actually AI. That's not Google links. That's AI's interpretation of the answer to your question. So if I tell kids, I want you to do this research, but don't use AI to do it, and they use Google, well, guess what? They're using AI, at least for part of it. It used to be pretty simple that we could say, you're going to do this essay, but don't use AI in this essay. Or this essay, it's okay to use AI. And it's either all or nothing. But what we're seeing now is much more of a mixed use of AI. A lot of kids have access to Grammarly. It's built right into their browser. And as they're typing, Grammarly will jump in and say, can I rewrite that for you? Can I elaborate on this for you? Can I make this a little bit better? And kids just either have to click to make it go away or click yes, and it rewrites it, in which case that's no longer the kid's writing, it's AI-based writing based on the kid's writing. Google Docs does this as well. So if kids are working in Google Docs, same thing happens. They start typing something, it'll jump in and with a suggestion. And if kids accept that, well, it's no longer 100% human-generated. And is it realistic now to expect that what students turn in is going to be 100% human-generated? If we have kids who go through 4 years of school and all they've ever done is 100% human-generated, are they missing out on something? I guess that's one of the big questions. But I think that the question also is one of ownership. Kids may not remember, honestly, which is their own writing and which is AI-generated writing, because it's sort of all going to blend into one. One of my 10th graders last year basically said this: if it's good, I say I wrote it. If it's bad, I say it was AI. This is how they're starting to look at it. But let's talk about how it works. AI is just like any computer. It takes input, it produces output. Input could be a prompt, often in text, but it could also be a photo, like with the fish tank example. But as teachers, well, let me say this. As computer scientists, we have a saying, garbage in, garbage out. So if you put in a bad prompt, you're probably going to get a bad result. As a lot of my teachers with a prompting workshop yesterday found out, it depends on how you ask, right? And we know this as teachers. If you ask a silly question, you're going to get a not great answer, right? Like this is not a great prompt. But the student, they're not wrong. I want a better result. But here's the thing, prompts are mini assignments, and we as teachers, we know good assignments because we write them all the time. So here's an assignment I give to some of my CS kids. This could represent, maybe there's a spaceship on square A and it's trying to get to the destination in square B. And as it traverses each adjacent square, the number indicates how much fuel is used up. So I want to find out what's the shortest path in terms of fuel cost. And if I ask this question, can you find the least expensive path from A to B? That's a lousy question because my kids will either say no, Or they'll try one path and they'll say yes, but I have no way of knowing if that's really the best path. So I've learned I've got to craft my assignments this way. Look for 3 different paths from A to B. Calculate each path's cost, which is the lowest, and why. And then here's my little trick when I'm trying to get students to articulate their thinking. I'll say, pretend you're giving instructions to another student. What would you tell them? And then you get a response that looks more like this. And this is closer to what I want. And when we work with AI, when you craft your prompts, think about giving all of the context and detail that you would give to that student who's always going to try to take the shortest cut. The shortcut, as you want to build in everything that you want them to do. Because, AI, despite its name, it's not really intelligent. It's kind of dumb. It struggles with a lot of things that we as human beings have no problem with. So, for example, telling the difference between a Chihuahua and a blueberry muffin. That is really hard. It is so hard. We can't write an algorithm to do this. We can't say, here's a series of instructions that conclusively tells you how to tell the difference. So what we've done is we use machine learning. We give it lots of labeled examples. We say, this is a dog. This is a blueberry muffin. This is a dog. This is a blueberry muffin. This is a sloth. This is a chocolate croissant. This is a cinnamon roll. This is a dog's tail. Because the consequences for getting this wrong could be catastrophic. But that's how AI works. It basically uses either labeled data, so you train it that way, it's called a training set, or it looks at lots and lots of data and comes up with its own conclusions by finding patterns. And so some of the pattern matching AIs, they're being used in medicine to detect breast cancer tumors, often before human eyes can see them, and it just knows somehow from the shape and the structure, it's able to find, just because it's seen many, many, many different examples, and it can kind of tell. Now, I used to talk about this example like a year ago, and I used to talk about the current research at that time, which basically said, if you have a trained doctor and you have a trained AI, neither of them is as good as a trained doctor working together with trained AI. And I used that as a way to explain that as professionals, it's important for us. It's like a force multiplier. If we work and learn with AI, we can be better than AI on its own. In 2025, that is no longer the case, and I'm sorry to say that. What the most recent study shows is that when you put a trained doctor together with a trained AI, the outcomes are actually worse than the trained AI on its own. And the reason is because trained doctors will often override the AI in decisions where the AI is actually making the right conclusion because the human is disagreeing with it. Which is a little messier of a conclusion. I don't know what to draw from that. But I will say that the trained doctor plus the AI is always better than somebody who has decided not to use AI at all. So I think probably that still holds. But again, AI is not intelligent. It is just a pattern matcher. And so basically the way that we trained it is the machine learning models ingested everything on the internet. And they just know statistically which words are likely to follow other words. So if we ask it to complete this sentence, it computes a confidence score. On the internet, most of the time, people don't wear bears when it's snowing. Sometimes you might find someone saying this, but not very often. Something like, if it's snowing, I wear a raincoat. That's a little bit higher, maybe more because of the coat itself. But it knows after a while that if you say, if it's snowing, I wear a winter coat, that's pretty common. And so it's going to complete the phrase that way. But the important thing to remember is it's not doing it because it knows that when it snows, it's cold. Or that when you put a coat on, it keeps you warm. AI doesn't understand the things that humans understand. All it knows are statistics and probabilities. And so it's not intelligent in the sense that it creates original thoughts or that it understands the human condition in any kind of way. So I often try to think of this. I don't prefer the term artificial intelligence. They're not intelligent. They don't understand what we do, but they do have an intuition about what seems right. And so when you put all of this training data together with machine learning, you get artificial intuition. So for me, that's what AI really represents, artificial intuition. Now there's a new kind of AI that's coming out now called agentic AI. And that's where it's an AI that can perform complex tasks on your own behalf in your browser. And that's kind of the next frontier of AI, and you will be seeing this rolling out this year, certainly. And I'll give you an example, actually. I was supposed to come out on the red eye on Monday night. And I had some meetings canceled, and I said, I want to get to Cleveland sooner. So I want to take a morning flight on Monday. And so what I did is I used Comet, which is Perplexity. They're an AI company. Perplexity has a special browser that can do some special things. I basically said to it, this is the exact prompt, take control of my browser and check to see if there are any earlier flights going to Cleveland tomorrow than the one that I'm currently booked on. This was Sunday night. And what it did is it opened up the United web page. I didn't even tell it what my reservation was. So it figured out how to log in, how to grab the my trips, and it then laid out, here are the possible flights. And then I said, okay, I'm interested in the smallest fare difference and then the shortest flight time. I prefer nonstop. And then what it did is it pulled it out, and much the same way that a travel agent would, it then said, okay, here are your options, and here's the option that I recommend. And then I said, okay, well, I generally like an aisle or window seat. I don't want to book it if I have to take a middle seat. And it checked. And then it said, yep, there's one there. So I said, okay, grab it. Let's do it. And it went all the way through the booking screen and stopped and waited for me to approve the payment. Would you like me to proceed and submit the payment? I said yes. And then it went ahead and it booked the flight. So I never touched the United website once. It did this completely on its own. And so this is what agentic AI is doing. It's the next level beyond simple prompts. So that's helpful for me. But what's important for you to know is there was a video that got posted just last month in July. And it was a professor who basically showed how a student could log in to their classroom website and submit the assignment without ever looking at the assignment. And I took a bunch of screenshots from the video. It's about a 3-minute video. And in the lower left, you'll see like the real time, what it took. So basically the prompt says, here's my online class, log in with these credentials. If I have any assignments due today, complete it and submit it. And it finds the assignment. Ironically, it's how AI impacts education. It's an essay. And then it says, okay, I'm starting the assignment. This is about 2.5 minutes in. It's a short essay discussing how AI is changing education and the potential benefits and drawbacks, and I'll ensure that my response includes specific AI applications in education and considers their impact on students and educators. Clearly, it read the assignment very carefully. And then drafts the response in about 20 seconds, and it's ready in the text entry box. Would you like me to go ahead and click Submit Assignment? And student says yes. And there it goes. It goes in. And so in less than 3.5 minutes, this assignment is submitted and ready to go. And this is what it looks like on the teacher's page when it comes in. It's ready for grading. So that's a little shocking, and you'd wonder why would anybody post a video about this. And here's what, sorry, this is a little small, but this is what the professor said. He basically said, for those who are concerned that the video shows students how to use generative AI, they already know how to do this. It's just the faculty that don't know how. And the other guy goes, uh-oh. So, I'm sorry if I'm ruining your day, but my day was actually ruined a long time ago. Because I'm a computer scientist. And computer scientists, like our world has been rocked by AI because we've just seen the parameters of our job shift completely in the last few years. We used to write algorithms. Now we're really curating training data. We've seen this shift moving from being programmers to really more curators of data. We used to write rules-based systems. Now it's reinforcement-based. We create the parameters and the environment, and then we create systems that learn from experience. They make mistakes and they adjust their behavior on their own. We used to work with fixed databases. Now we work with live data analysis. So these are all shifts that are dramatically changing the job of computer science. But, I got to say this, the people who know best how to deal with that shift are teachers. Because we've been dealing with this shift for about 50 years. Ever since the 1970s, we've been dealing with exactly the same kind of shift, moving from being sages on the stage to guides on the side, moving from direct instruction to experiential learning. We create the environments where students can learn, and we let them learn within those parameters. We give them lots of freedom. This is the idea behind project-based learning. This is why elementary school teachers are some of the most important members of the faculty, because they've been doing this for a really long time. Pedagogically, that's what you do. You set up the systems, you set up the environments, and kids learn within those. We can learn a lot from that. I think that, if anything, the world needs our insights, because we know best how to make that shift. And this is what Alison Gopnik at UC Berkeley said. She said that caregivers somehow accomplish the task of producing new, intelligent, autonomous creatures. This is an incredible mandate that we've been given. We've been entrusted with people's children to do this. And this is an essential job, to provide that environment for them. Now, I don't know if you remember, during the pandemic, they declared teachers to be essential workers. And that's because, just like firefighters or nurses, we are not easily replaced by automation, because our core skill set is working primarily with people. In the age of AI, care and empathy become the essential intelligences. And so teachers are vital to this AI transformation. Care and empathy have never been and will never be more important. We have to hold on to what makes us uniquely human. We need to recognize the value in human endeavors. And we need to position ourselves to preserve our humanity in the face of this sweeping technological change. That's kind of the big message that I'm giving. And so, we talked about how AI works. Let's really talk more about that human insight. I think it's really important to help kids come to terms with this sweeping technology. And so I actually have a 7-word AI policy in my classroom. I think it's simple and it's direct and everybody gets it. Here it is. Don't let the pigeon drive the bus. And that pretty much says it all, because as you use AI and as AI gets embedded in every facet of your online life, it's constantly going to be asking you, can I do this for you? Can I write this better? Can I help you think through this? And some of the time, sure. But my goal is to teach my kids and show them that no matter what the pigeon says, we don't want to live in a world where the pigeons are driving the bus. You need to be the one, you know where the bus is going. The pigeon can help, but absolutely never let the pigeon get behind the wheel and drive the bus. I want kids to be accountable for the learning that they do. Here's a quick little thing that I do in my class. Every kid in every section, they have a little manila folder with their name on it. And when they come in the classroom, they either take it out of the folder at the front of the classroom, or if I want kids to sit in certain working groups, I'll just put the folders down ahead of time before class. And so kids know to come in class, they look for their folder, and that's the group they're going to be sitting with and working with that day. In each folder, I have a daily worksheet that they work on, like every day. And it's literally a piece of paper, and it has questions that have to do with stuff that we just covered. It could be things that are upcoming, so I sometimes like to set up the lesson ahead of time and do sort of a pre-knowledge check. And again, this is all done with pencils. So I have these cups that sit on the table that have pencils and they have blue pens. And their job is to come in, they work quietly, they can't work on this with anybody else, and they use a pencil and they just fill it out. It's like one page, sometimes double-sided. And I give them about 5 or 10 minutes to complete it, and that's when I take my attendance. And then when we're done, here's an example of some of the things that we'll ask. We actually did this exercise where we asked ChatGPT to analyze an algorithm, and ChatGPT actually gave the wrong answer. And so we asked them, can you explain why this is wrong in your own words? And so I find it a really good way to check in to see what kids know. And then when they're done, we come back together as a whole group, and I say, okay, put the pencils back, take a blue pen out. And if you don't know the answer, I want you to guess, but if you guessed or you left it blank, we're going to go over each of these in class and make your corrections in blue pen. They have to make those corrections in blue pen. And then at the end of class, they put them back in the folders and they come back to the front of the room. Now, I do look at all of them in the first couple of weeks. But after that, I kind of don't look at all of them. I kind of know which ones I need to check. They're not graded. And they don't technically, I always tell the kids, no, they don't count. They don't count in that sense, but I'm looking at them. And I tell them overall the goal is over the course of the year to have less blue pen and more pencil. And if you find that you're leaving a lot of these things blank regularly and you're having to write in the answers, then you probably should come see me during tutorial period or during study hall so we can get some stuff straight. And if I see kids with a lot of blue and they're not coming in, then I'll go out and reach out to them proactively. So this is kind of a low-tech way for me to check in individually with kids. And I find that works because I've had, in the last few years, kids turning in a ton of homework assignments that are suspiciously perfect, and yet they can't write a simple for loop if I ask them to do this on paper. And so these quick little checks, the secret is it's really a daily quiz. I give the kids daily quizzes. I just don't call them daily quizzes. I just call it a daily check, and I say it doesn't count. But it serves the same purpose. I actually, when we go over it, I cold call kids. And I make this a part of my classroom culture. I use a little scratch applet that randomly, some teachers use popsicle sticks, the same idea. But the idea of it is, it takes the sting out of being wrong. Because the kids know that they are always potentially going to get called on. And if they get something wrong, it's not because they raised their hand and chose because they thought they were right. It's because the duck chose them to speak. And they just give the best answer they can. And that's where I can set expectations about classroom culture. I want kids to be kind in my class. The first time somebody gets something wrong and a bunch of kids go, "Oh," I say, "Stop." The reason that's not great is because that gets people less willing to try things. And in this class, we try things, we take risks, and we're wrong a lot of the time, and that's okay. And so I reinforce that over and over again in pretty much everything that I do, and it's so important. The other reason why I think kids cheat in my class on AI is just poor time management. And so we have a system that we've used really successfully, both at Punahou School, where I was before, and then here at Menlo School. It's a tardies and late system. And so basically, kids don't have to turn things in on the deadline. So basically, every assignment has a certain due date. Now, if kids can't get it done, I tell them, look, if you're stuck, go to sleep. Get up the next day, take a tardy on this. Every kid gets 3 tardies per semester. And a tardy basically means you can turn it in 24 hours, basically 1 school day later. So by the next school day, so if it was due at midnight, you have till midnight the next school day. If it was due at midnight on a Friday, you have till midnight on the Monday to do it. And then when it comes in, I grade it as I would normally have graded it, as if it came in on time, because I don't believe in docking kids' grades because something was late. But they have 2 tardies now instead of 3. If they can't make the tardy deadline, then they can take what's called a late. And the difference is a late is 7 calendar days. So if it was due at midnight on Friday, they have until midnight the following Friday. But the catch is they have to meet with me in person to request the late sooner rather than later, because I want to know, are you stuck? Or was this, I came back late on the bus from soccer and I just didn't have a chance to do it, but I know what I'm doing, so I'm going to finish it up on time. Okay, fine, your late is approved. But I don't approve the late until I've had a chance to meet with the kids directly. And after 7 days, if they miss the late deadline, they don't get any credit for the assignment. I'll still grade it, but they can't get credit for it. And this works awesome. Ever since I implemented this, the kids keep track of their own deadlines. And they are proactive about seeking help. The problem was always where I was a little fuzzy about deadlines. Like, I'd always say, yeah, come talk to me about an extension if you need an extension. And then I had to sort of validate extensions, this person got injured, this person has a college trip. Like, I don't want to have to spend my time validating the extension. I just tell them, look, it doesn't matter. Whatever the reason is, you have tardies, use them. And when you run out, then come talk to me. And I've been known to grant additional tardies or lates if necessary to kids. But this system has really changed everything because it's clear from the start. All right, let's talk about essential skills for the AI age. So I think probably the most important skill is design thinking. Probably the biggest thing, and empathy, because again, we're leaning into that human piece that AI just doesn't get. We use this in our engineering program in the middle school. I reinforce it. All freshmen at Menlo take an AI literacy, AI skills class, and we teach them about all of this stuff. And the very first day, we start with teaching design thinking. And design thinking is very powerful because it's a perfect lead into project-based learning. And project-based learning is incredibly motivating for kids because it embodies these 3 principles. Dan Pink talks about this in A Whole New Mind. He talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. You might have seen this as, I matter, autonomy. I have agency over what I choose to do. What I think about this assignment matters. I matter. I can. I have the skills that I need to do this. I have those foundational skills. I can do this. That's mastery. And I care. Purpose. We work best when we have a goal in mind that has a purpose bigger than ourselves or the grade. So if you have those three things, I matter, I can, I care, or actually I care, I can, and I matter, that framework is introduced in learning with AI. Joan Watson talks about this. I care, I can, I matter. And in all things that we do with our kids, when we give them projects, strong intrinsic motivation is the antidote to cheating with AI. And if we think about what are all the ways that we tell our kids, you care, you can, you matter, that's the message that we as educators are sending. And that empowers them. I give kids a problem. I say, your problem, your goal is not to get a grade. Your goal is to solve a problem, make the world better. And the first year that I did this with my app design class, I had two kids come up there super excited, and they said, Mr. Kiang, we've got a perfect solution to a problem. I said, great. What's the problem that you guys found? We spent 2 weeks, researching problems. They said, Mr. Kiang, here's the problem. When we go to the golf course with my mom, she never knows the right club to use. So we're going to create an app that measures the windage and it knows all the holes on the course, and when it'll just tell her, you should use a 9-iron. And I said, okay, that was the biggest problem you guys found? Now, Mr. Kiang, this is an important problem. It's a big problem. I said, okay. So they built it, and in terms of the goals of my class, they did a great job. They learned how to code. They learned how to prototype. They built the app. The app worked. It was awesome. But next year I said, I'm going to pick some different problems. So I actually, the UN provides, globalgoals.org, all the world leaders got together in 2015, and they chose the 17 biggest problems facing the world today, everything from pollution to clean water to climate change. Choosing the right golf club was like number 18, so it didn't quite make the cut, but yeah, what can you do, right? And so my kids, they read everything, they study it. This is my classroom, and they pick something that appeals to them. So one group of kids chose responsible consumption and production, and they came up with an app that helps you recycle. Now, with AI, this is even easier. Like, this was an app design class where my kids all had a year of programming experience. They could build this stuff themselves. But honestly, I would argue that the important part is not the building of the app. The important part is finding the problem, researching the problem, prototyping how are we going to address this. And now with AI, you could create this. You could create this app much more easily. I had a kid whose dad was a landscaper, and so with sustainability, he worked with his dad to design an app that allows you to plan green spaces around corporate buildings in Silicon Valley and San Mateo. I had another group that worked with, there was a gentleman, a member of our Menlo community, whose wife Lucy had been diagnosed with ALS, a horrible neuromuscular disease, Lou Gehrig's disease. And sadly, she'd lost the use of her voice, so she couldn't speak anymore. And so he came to our kids and he said, can you help us build us an app where my wife can, from her bed, draw on an iPad, and I'm in the other room on my phone, I'll get a little alert, and then I can read what she's writing to me. And the kids said, absolutely, we're going to help you. And he came and visited our class. He told us about the problem. The kids leaned in hard with empathy on this, trying to understand what is it like to communicate without your voice. In fact, all of the kids took a vow of silence, essentially, for 24 hours. They didn't speak. They just carried around the prototype of the app, and they used that to communicate. And they came up with a lot of great insights about assumptions that they'd made that weren't quite right when they actually used the app. They learned a lot, and this is hard for teenagers. Imagine saying 24 hours, don't say anything. But this is not something that AI can do. Right? AI could not do that. The kids came up with these prototypes, and they started programming it. And in November, Lucy passed away. And it was devastating. David came to class, talked with my kids about it. The kids were crying. I was crying. But he said, here's the thing. I kind of knew in August it was probably too late for my wife. But your work could still have meaning. It can still help lots of people. Please continue to work on it. And the kids did. They continued to work on it. They actually worked over winter break, which I'm not supposed to give them work over winter break, but they apparently had a Slack channel going, and they kept sending prototypes and ideas and bits of code back and forth. And they finally got to the end. And I had told them at the start, we're racing against the clock, guys. Use AI as much as you can. If AI will help you get this done, go ahead and use it. But what they found was that AI was actually slowing them down because it was making mistakes. And if they said, change this mistake here, it would go and rewrite the entire code base and introduce other errors elsewhere. Almost like if you told it to write your English paper but fix the conclusion and then it changed the rest of the paper, even the stuff you liked. So in the end, they just said, you know what, we care too much about what this is to trust it to AI. We're just going to do it ourselves. And they did it themselves. And luckily, they had the skills to do that. And they saw it as a backup. But it's not the backup. They actually were able to use AI as an assistant, but the pigeon wasn't driving the bus. They were. Now, David Milgram is actually working with the ALS Institute in San Francisco this summer to get this out to hundreds of thousands of people all over the world who are going to be able to use this app that these kids have done. And so I'm trying to foster that sense of ownership on the part of my kids. Now, the second, I think, really important skill is, and I originally just had critical thinking, but reading obviously is part of critical thinking, but reading I think is so important, I pulled it out and moved it to the front. And it's also something that my kids don't do particularly well. They don't even read the instructions. But we're entering an age where we're about to see an explosion of student-directed AI content. Tons and tons of content. And so if we're asking kids to use AI to assist with writing or with project proposals, they're going to want to generate a number of different drafts and maybe use different models and compare and see which are better. It means, realistically, they may be reading 3 to 4 times more than they're actually submitting. So I'm planning right away to change my classes to focus much more on reading code rather than writing code. There's this new kind of coding that's changing computer science. It's sort of called vibe coding, which makes sense because it started in California, and the idea is you kind of just sort of lean into the vibe, and you kind of let it happen. And you saw me do this yesterday. I sort of vibe coded an app. And here's the thing. The CEO of Anthropic, which makes Claude, said in 3 to 6 months, AI is going to be writing 90% of the code. In 12 months, we may be in a world where AI is essentially writing all of the code. So our profession is changing drastically. The statistics are staggering. The labor statistics say that, the number of computer science majors that are unemployed is twice that of ethnic studies majors. So they're staggering figures that we're seeing. They fired the head of the bureau that came out with these, so I don't know what's going to happen with the statistics after this, but these are the accurate figures I saw. So I've actually been leaning heavy into this. I've been doing a lot of vibe coding over the summer. I did the student seating chart generator because it was a problem that I've often had, but it wasn't like a big problem. It was sort of what I call a toleration. You have all these little issues like that. They're not big enough for you to spend a ton of time, but they're annoying. They're tolerations. That's what this was. So I created an app where you can put in the number of all your students in a list, and the list gets saved on your device. It's not sent anywhere. And then you can just hit generate, and it just scrambles all the kids' names. And you can say how many groups you want them in. I just put this up on my website. It's free because I didn't pay anything for it. I had ChatGPT do it. But this is something that I was able to create, which is fun. Yesterday, we were talking with the group. I have a story framework that I use to create stories with kids called A Person in a Place with a Problem. And literally, I just put into ChatGPT, this is the one prompt I did. Create a web app that does this stuff. And it came out with this. As soon as I hit enter, it came out with this, and I threw this up on the website. And this is basically like a slot machine. You just keep hitting generate, and you'll get a random assortment of random people, places, and problems. So you get a unique story every time. And again, this is just an idea that I had, and I popped it in, and it took 15 minutes to do this. And not because I know anything about computer science. I mean, the biggest techie thing was putting it up on the website, which you can see at kiang.net/spinner. You can use this as well if you like. But I think AI is just going to allow us to solve more problems faster. All of these little tolerations. And it's going to widen the funnel. So there are many more people who are going to be diving into using AI to create web apps and code. So I can't be upset about that, even in spite of the fact that my profession is changing so much. Now, one of the things that we know about AI is that you are a better user of AI if you're using it around something that you already know well. So what I tell kids is I did an ethical leadership class with them, and in the class I said, I want you to teach another person something that you know well. That's the challenge. And kids used AI to generate websites around things that they already knew a lot about. And so I gave them some starter examples. I had students sit down and do prototypes. One student, her thing was friendship bracelets. And so she used the ChatGPT to create a website structure, and then she took her own photos, came in with instructions, and taught people how to make friendship bracelets using the website. Another student does Taekwondo, and she was thrilled to find that her school of Taekwondo was known to ChatGPT, and so it knew the moves and the techniques. Some of the definitions were a little wrong, so she had to go in and correct them. But this was a great object lesson for them. ChatGPT is not perfect, but because it's a subject that they already know something about, they were able to make the corrections. And then, this is really important. I always try to have kids work directly across the table from each other. So we had a little mini science fair where kids presented to each other what these projects were. And this wasn't stand up in front of the class. This was two concentric circles. The class was divided in half, and they rotated. So everybody had a chance to get some one-on-one time learning about the different websites. And, you know, this girl did a personality test that she designed, and you take it on paper, but the results are analyzed on the computer. And so what I loved about this is it's not about the technology. It's about the human connection. It's about kids communicating something that they know really well and that they're passionate about. And the website facilitates their teaching about that subject. And I think that's a great way to use AI. It's the pigeon sitting on the side, and it's the humans that are connecting and communicating with each other. And we really lean heavy into this at Menlo School. Every May we do a share fair with hundreds of people. All the computer science students in the school have their own table, and they demonstrate and they talk about the projects that they've put together, and they get a tremendous amount of feedback and positive reinforcement from parents, administrators, other students. It's a great way to drum up interest in some of the things that we're doing. It allows kids to do larger scale experiments. So this was a pull-up bar where they created an AI that would say how many pull-ups you did. And if you didn't do the pull-up all the way, it would make fun of you loudly. So, these guys. So now the third skill is something that maybe a lot of people may not be familiar with, but I think it's just as important, and it's this idea of version control. And in computer science, we use a tool called GitHub. And the idea is GitHub allows you to experiment with multiple versions of the same project. So for my trashy romance novel that I'm writing, I decide, okay, here's what happens. Josie and Rick fall in love as their house is burning to the ground behind them. And the story progresses from there, and every time I write it, I create a save point. And I'm using AI to help me write this, you know. But what if I decide to change? And I say, hey, you know what? What if Josie doesn't take the job in the city? I don't want to throw away all the good work that I've had, and I'm not doing all the writing myself. A lot of it's pretty fast with AI, so we can afford to take a flyer on this. I need to create a branch. So without affecting the main storyline, I'm going to create a branch where we explore what happens if Josie does turn it down. What happens if Rick gets sick all of a sudden? Or what happens if Josie decides to live in a Costco? I mean, there are all kinds of things that we can play around with. But again, because AI makes it so easy to explore multiple branches of a story, it's faster than if we're writing all the stuff ourselves. If we're really trying to explore a story, we need a more complicated way to track changes than just a linear history. And that's version control. And this is a great business opportunity for some of your bright students. Come up with version control for writers and artists and musicians. There's no reason why you couldn't use GitHub with writing, but right now it's mostly used with code. But I think in the near future, there's going to be a need for more complex ways to track and back up if you decide that there are changes that need to be made without losing a lot of work that's been generated, because we're about to see an explosion of student-directed AI content. So let's finally talk about that. Let's talk about creativity. And actually, let's talk about my trashy romance novel. I used AI in many ways, not just to do the writing, but also to generate cover art. Yeah. And I just need to tell it, this is what I want you to create. Yeah, it's dramatic. You know, but I was like, well, I think we can do better than that. Let's try another one. That'll probably get me fired. No pun intended. But then I was like, well, every book needs a good video, so let's do a promo.
Her heart was in the classroom. His was in the firehouse. But passion doesn't follow the syllabus.
Really? I was the director. I didn't actually film this. This was all done with AI, and AI allows us to do lots of videos. So here's a video I threw together. All the prompt was, cat in kitchen chopping vegetables next to a rat.
Prompt details matter, and AI can hallucinate.
Good things to keep in mind. This was a clip from a video that I was doing for teachers about things to keep in mind with AI, and that was an outtake because I couldn't control whether it put the captions in or not. You only have so much control with these new video tools. Here's another one I did. This is another outtake.
Ugh, I'm starving over here.
Tell me about it. I'd kill for crumbs right now.
I sniffed a pizza box earlier.
Yeah, I ate the coupon.
And so literally all I'm doing is giving it a text prompt, and it is coming up with the video and the sound behind it. This is Google's VO3. It's brand new. This is the story spinner that I was telling you about a little earlier, and so this prompt, just totally at random, a busker with stage fright at a tech expo buzzing with prototypes, and the power fails and the backup won't start. That just came up randomly. You can just copy the prompt, and I pasted it in. This is the interface for Google's VO3, and then it just starts generating the video, and it takes about 5 or 10 minutes. So we'll speed ahead like a cooking video. And here's what it came up with just from that one text prompt.
Attention, we are experiencing a power outage. Backup generators should activate momentarily.
And then it always does 2 versions. Here's another version. Now, if I were a better director, I would have given it more instructions about who the character should be, what their gender should be, maybe what they look like. And I'm really the director here. I'm not doing the film. There's still a place for learning how to, depth of field, focus, all of the finer arts of doing video. But we are going to see many more students being their own directors and having the larger vision of here's the story that I want to tell visually. They're going to need writing skills to be able to craft the prompt. But that will be how we go about making these videos happen. And so I think kids will still be actively learning. They're just going to be learning something different. And it may spur kids to take film and learn more of the details about it. In the same way that vibe coding, lots of apps that solve lots of problems and tolerations might encourage you to start learning more about code. So in some ways, I think this is a good thing. Because it kind of takes away some of the pain. And I know this, I thought I loved music, and I thought I could really get into music, and I started, when I was a kid, going through these piano lessons, and pianos are hard to play, and the keys are spaced pretty far apart when you have small hands, because the strings need to be parallel to each other because they're going towards the back of the instrument where there are these hammers that hit. So there are reasons why piano keyboards are made the way that they are. And those reasons make it really difficult for you to kind of spread your little fingers far enough to play the chords that you want to play that sound like the music that you are growing up listening to. I wanted to be a keyboardist in a band, and I couldn't stick with piano long enough. And the same thing with typewriters, right? Just like piano keyboards, typewriters were actually made to make it slower to type. Because on a mechanical T keyboard, the faster you type, the more chance that the keys get jammed. And so they're actually made to make it difficult to type. Now, the funny thing is, when we moved to digital, so this is an iPad app, the first iPad apps that came out actually looked like the piano keyboard. They basically duplicated it. So now you still have the same problem of learning the key presses to do the different chords. Why is this? Why did we use the digital device to emulate the analog restrictions of the original instrument? They started to come out with different things. They came out with a program where you can literally press the chord and it'll play the chord. Because if the point is I want to create musical compositions and start learning chord progressions, I could just learn it on a digital app by pressing the button that does it. So I think it gets to this fundamental question about learning. What's important about being a keyboardist? Is it mastering the instrument, or is it making music? And for me, I kind of hope that it's more about making music, and I'm going to show you an example here. So I've got GarageBand kind of pulled up on my iPad here, and GarageBand is kind of like the state of the art in actually helping me realize my musical dreams. And you can actually create a song. So I'm going to serenade you a little bit here with an EDM version, and if we can pump it up here we go. So I've sequenced all these instruments in here, and I'm setting off the progressions at different points. Take some timing. We sort of vibe with this. Here we go. Here's a drop. All right. University School, let's go. Woo! We got it. I'm playing music. We got it. Pump, 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 pump. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know. That felt awesome. I don't know if it was earned entirely, but boy, that was great. But that's the thing we think about, like, how do we rank process versus product? There are still so many things where the human endeavor is more important than the result. Think about marathoning. Right? Lots of people run marathons, but we still celebrate because the individual achievement of that human, what it takes, we know what it takes to do that. It's hard. It takes a lot of discipline. That's what we celebrate. The same thing with summiting a mountain. Chess was solved 20 years ago by computers. Computers can now play chess better than any human being, but chess is more popular than ever, and people still play chess. So there are certain things where the endeavor is more important. Now, if I'm being honest, I'm going to say, with computer science, yeah, of course, writing code helps you think and all of that. But there's other ways to teach you how to think, too. Writing does that. Music does that, right? The big goal in computer science is to write code that works smoothly and efficiently and makes stuff. And right now, AI has eaten our lunch, and it does that. But I would argue that something like writing is fundamentally different, because writing is a way of teaching thinking. Writing is a way of organizing your thought. Writing is a way of communicating with other human beings. So there are certain skills where even if the end product is not that great, it's the process that we celebrate. And so I think for us as educators, we're really trying to think more about what's the value of the endeavor versus the ability of technology to unlock creativity, to make me a keyboardist and rock this house in a way that, I used to think I had to master the piano to do. One way that we can think about this is, if the task that you're asking kids to do, is it forklifting or is it weightlifting? Because if you've got a lot of boxes that need to go from one end to the other, you probably just want to use a forklift to do that, because the purpose is to move them from one to the other. But if the purpose is to become stronger by lifting those boxes, lifting weights, that's weightlifting. That's fundamentally different. You don't want to use AI for that. So I think it helps if we can make clear to our students whether the tasks are forklifting or weightlifting, and what's the most important part of that task, because of course you're going to get stronger carrying all those boxes, but you're also going to be a lot slower doing it. So I think there's a good way to think about that, and also, again, to keep reinforcing with kids this idea of, I care, I can, and I matter. That's so important. So now I'm going to challenge you to think about this. What can you do? And it's often very overwhelming. Oh my gosh, I've got all this, what do I do? So I would encourage you to think about it in the next 6 days. What's one goal? Maybe I'll take the same prompt and put it into 2 different large language models and experiment. Maybe that's one thing that I do. What would you do in the next 6 weeks? Maybe I'll come up with a new unit or a new lesson that uses AI in some innovative way. Maybe I'll implement the tardies and late system on the next assignment just to try it out. And then what's your goal in the next 6 months? And so that's something that you can do today. Come up with a simple plan. Just jot it down to yourself. Put it on your phone. Ask AI to help you. What can I do in the next 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, and then share it with your colleagues. And let's get a conversation going about this. You know, AI is here. And it reminds me of this story. I had a colleague who, she and her husband bought a house on the slopes of an extinct volcano on the island of Hawaii. And on the slopes of the house, there was this tree. And the tree made some of the worst oranges you could possibly imagine. They tasted the oranges, and they were sour, they were small, they didn't have much juice, and they were barely edible. And so her husband is like, well, we just have to cut this tree down and plant something else. And she said, well, hold on, not so fast. My dad's a farmer. Let's see what he thinks. So Dad comes over for dinner, and he looks at these oranges, and he goes, oh, those aren't oranges. Those are actually lemons. They're actually really big orange lemons. And then all of a sudden, when they cut into them, they realize, wow, these are really sweet. These are actually really good, and there's a lot of juice in them for a lemon. And so they started to, they created, her son did like a whole lemonade stand. It only takes 3 of these large lemons, and they were really sweet. They tasted amazing. And all of a sudden, they realized all of these possibilities. But here's the funny thing. The fruit didn't change. What changed was how we thought about it. And I think in many ways, ChatGPT is a lot like that. Right? Because if we think about it as this is the cheating tool, this is a way for students to show they have zero integrity. If we think about it in those ways, I think the possibilities that we see are going to be kind of shriveled up. But if we start thinking about it as it's a way to unlock student creativity, it's a way to give a voice to kids who might not previously be able to articulate their thinking. If we think about it in those ways, I think we open up lots more possibilities. And sadly, we can't cut the tree down. Believe me, people have tried. It's there. But perhaps what we can change is sort of how we look at it, how we humanize it. AI can do a lot of things. It can solve equations. It can write code. It can even mimic your writing style. But it can't care. It can't inspire. It can't look a child in the eye and say, I see you. I believe in you. So I think in this new age, the most essential intelligences are the ones that we've always had. Care, empathy, and human connection. And you already know how to do this. Every day, you create environments where kids feel safe to take risks. You craft prompts. You pose questions. You challenge kids' thinking. And that's not new. That's your superpower. And you are exactly who we need to lead us into this new chapter. This moment calls for courage. It calls for imagination. It calls for the people who know how to bring out the best in others, and that's you. So if you've ever asked yourself, am I ready for this? You are. Because you can. You must. And I'll be right there with you. Let's go out and build something amazing together. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you.